These are the assembly instructions for my Halloween themed octagon candy dome. I'm starting with a ghost image that has the rotating dome in the center. I have two identical pieces except one has a circle in the center and the other one has a little trapezoid shaped cutout. I've already applied the vinyl to my images, and I didn't like the fact that I was throwing out such a large piece of vinyl. I've weeded out the negative cut of my vinyl, and I've just put it on some parchment paper so I can save it for a later project. I did that with both pieces. Then I assembled the acetate dome. Because it's transparent, it's difficult to see the acetate on camera. So I've cut it out of cardstock, and to start, I'm just folding down on all those little score lines that are in the center that form that center octagon. Then I'm going to fold down on the score line that's at the very end of each one of these extensions. So, like so. And then the score line that's at the side, and that forms my tab at the side. And then the second score line down. So now we have a little rectangle. So the next one is a little triangle that's at the side. I'm taking my scraper tool, I'm positioning it right along that score line, and I'm folding down on that score line, like so. And I'm going to go around my entire shape, just folding down on those score lines for all 8 of my extensions. All right, so now that I've folded down on all the score lines, I'm going to add my double-sided tape to the tabs. So I'm putting double-sided tape on the tab that's at the top and the tab that's on the side of that top rectangle. And I'm going to go around doing that for all 8 of them. So right at that score line, I'm covering the tab with double-sided tape, and I'm doing that for all 8 of them. So now I've just adhered my 2 pieces of double-sided tape on each one of these extensions. So I'm going to pick one of those side tabs, and I'm going to remove the double-sided tape from the side tab, and then I'm just tucking my tab underneath the panel that's right beside it, and then just gluing it down. So that little triangle lays under the panel. My sides are glued together, and that will help my dome take shape. Tucking that little triangular piece under and then joining those 2 rectangles at the tab. I want the cut edge of this rectangle to be right against the score line of the tab. And I'm working my way around the shape, doing exactly the same thing for all 8 sides. So that forms the peak of my dome. And so with these tabs at the bottom, I'm going to fold them all upwards, like so. I have my double-sided tape facing upwards. And so now this is ready to be applied to my card. So next I'm taking this piece that has the octagonal cutout in the center, and it fits over my dome. So I'm just going to remove the liner on the double-sided tape on the 8 tabs of my dome. I've got those 8 tabs so that they can fold flat on my craft mat. And then I'm just going to lower my ring piece over my dome, and then I'm just applying a little bit of pressure to make sure that that double-sided tape takes. All those tabs are glued to that ring piece. So next I'm going to put double-sided tape over those tabs that I've just glued down. So all around the perimeter of this piece. I have a round piece and an octagon piece that have the same opening. I'm just putting glue on the underside of my octagon, and I'm gluing it to my base so that the edges of that opening match up. So I've cut the octagon out of white cardstock, the same as for my ghost pieces, and then the circular pieces cut out of craft board because I wanted something a little bit sturdier. And then I have these brads. The head of this brad is approximately 1/4 inch. I'm going to put it through that center hole, and then I have a small rectangle, and I'm going to thread it through the pins of my brad as well. I'm just going to open the pins so that they lay flat. And then I'm putting some double-sided tape just on top of the brad. So next I'm removing the liner on my double-sided tape that's at the base of my dome, and I'm lining up the sides of my octagon on my rotating piece with the sides of my dome piece so that they match, like so. And then I'm going to take the liner off my red line tape, So I want that to be straight and parallel against the edge of the cutout. And I'm positioning it right over the opening in my card base. So I flipped this ghost piece over so that the pretty side is down on my mat, and I've adhered my dome to my card base like so. I'm just going to put my foam tape all along the contour of my ghost, but avoiding the perimeter of my spinning dome. I've put foam tape on my base. I've left a nice border around my spinning dome because I don't want anything to prevent it from turning. So I'm just removing the liner from all my foam tape. So now I'm just lowering the top piece and gluing it to the base. So now, with my dome flipped over, I just load my candy and spin my dome. And there's my candy dome. To get the candy out, you just spin it and it all falls out. So now I'm assembling the Cauldron version. So I've just prepped my acetate piece and I have my double-sided tape on all those acetate tabs, and I'm removing the liner from the double-sided tape. And then I'm going to take my octagon piece and I'm just lowering it over my dome. I'm just going over the edge of that cardstock piece and making sure that my acetate is adhering to it. So all my tabs have adhered to that ring piece. I'm going to flip my piece over and I'm putting double-sided tape all along the perimeter of that piece of cardstock. So I'm just covering up the acetate tabs. So then I have the circle with the cutout and I have the octagon with that same cutout, and I'm just going to glue them together. So I'm just making sure that the cutouts are exactly on top of one another for both pieces. And then I'm taking my brad and I'm threading it through the center hole, and then I'm threading through my little rectangle with the exact same hole, and then I'm opening the pins of my brad, laying them flat like so. I have a piece of red line tape to lay on top of my brad like so. I'm going to remove the liner off the double-sided tape on the perimeter of the underside of my dome. I'm just making sure that the image on the perimeter matches up with the image on the base. So what I was able to do was take the interior part that I was cutting out and reuse all pieces from it. I'm just gluing my dome down so that it matches up with the image. Make sure that glues down. So next I'm going to put some foam tape on the base of my card. And then I'm taking the liner off my red line tape and I'm making sure that my little rectangle is parallel with the cutout. You don't want it showing through, you want it just positioned parallel to your cutout. And then I'm just placing this exactly on top of the cutout. And then I'm taking the liner off all of my foam tape. And then I'm just positioning the opening over, making sure that the edges are flush on both layers. And so when it's closed, it looks like this. And then when it's open, my image spins into place. So I have 3 print and cuts for the kitten one. And one of the print and cuts, I'm actually going to keep the pieces that cut out of the potion bottle. So this one I can toss, I don't need it. But these 2 pieces I'm going to keep. They become important parts of my dome. So I'm going to start by constructing my dome. I'm removing the liner from the double-sided tape on all 8 of those tabs that are at the base of my acetate. And then I'm going to take one of those pieces that I've rescued from the center of my print and cut image, and I'm just lowering it over my dome right onto those tabs. And then I'm going in with my bone folder and I'm just making sure that those tabs are adhering to that double-sided tape. Now I'm going to take double-sided tape and just add it to the perimeter of the underside of my dome. So now I have this piece that's cut out of craft board and that other piece from the center of my print and cut. And I'm just going to put glue on the back of this piece and then just glue it so that it's exactly on top of the cutouts that are on my piece of craft board. And then I'm going to take one of my brads and I'm just threading it through that center hole. I'm taking this tiny rectangle and I'm threading my brad through the center hole of it as well. And then I'm going to open up the pins and lay them flat on top of that rectangle. And then I have a piece of red line tape. I'm adhering my piece of red line tape right over that brad. So I'm back with my dome. I'm taking the liner off the double-sided tape that's on the underside of my dome. So I'm looking for that little brown rectangle that matches up with the top of my potion sign. So that potion sign continues on that outer ring. So next I have my piece of printing cut that has the trapezoid shape cut out of it. I'm going to flip it so that the pretty side is down on the mat. And then I have a piece of white cardstock. I'm just going to glue it to the back of that piece just to make it sturdier. So I'm just gluing those two panels together. I want the edges to match up. So then I have the piece that has the octagon that I've cut out of it to use for the dome. It's the perfect shape. I'm going to glue it on top, and again, all it does is make this base piece sturdier. You really don't need the image, it's just a bonus to have it there. Next, I'm going to put a layer of foam tape, the perimeter of my image, and I want to put it all over this base with the exception of around the perimeter of my dome, because I still want this piece to be able to spin. Now I use foam tape because that's what I have on hand. So I'm tracing around my cat image. And here I'm using parchment paper. And I just cut around it, leaving quite the border. So that's where the opening is. So that circle represents where my dome needs to spin. So I don't want my foam tape to be too close to my domes. So I don't want my foam tape anywhere within this circle. So I'm filling in the rest of the area with foam tape. And the reason why I use parchment paper is because it reduces the amount of sticky residue left on my scissors. And I'm going to flip my piece over, and I'm cutting around my shape just a little bit in from the line that I have traced. I'm just going to cut along the circle that I've drawn. Then I'm taking my base piece. Then I'm just going to dry fit my dome on top. Okay, there's definitely enough room all the way around for this to move. I'm just going to apply my foam tape. So next I'm just going to take the liner off my foam tape, and I'm taking the backing off my red line tape as well. I'm making sure that that little rectangle isn't showing, so I've lined it up so that it's parallel to my trapezoid cutout. I'm positioning my dome exactly over the opening on the base. And then I'm taking my top piece, I'm lowering it onto my base, and I'm making sure that the edges are lined up. So we just load the candy from behind. The candy is going to hide the fact that the word potion is upside down, but once you empty it, the word is in position.